You know, the easiest deals are the ones where you're buying another business or merging it in the business you're already in. Those are easy. They're easy to figure out. They're generally horizontal acquisitions. And you gain scale, synergies. The bulk of the ones that we've done over the years were what you'd call rolling up the cable industry. When the cable industry started, pretty much every community issued a franchise to operate in that community. Typically, they would issue the franchise to local people, usually politicians or their friends. And so the industry started 50 years ago, very, very balkanized, thousands of individual cable franchises. And over time, those congealed into the cable industry. Process even continues to this day with a few larger transactions as the cosmology, the concentration of these assets grew in the U.S. That same process is going on around the world right now. So that is a horizontal integration process. It drives scale, size, balance sheet size, financial capability. Then you have the vertical type deals. So I own a cable system. So what am I going to carry on my cable system? You know, if all I'm going to carry is the broadcasting programming, what am I really adding? So then the issue became, and this is an issue in the early 80s, how do you create channels? How do you create programming that people are interested in enough that they will subscribe to your cable service and pay for the programming? And that was the vertical phase. And so I'd say through the 80s, we probably invested in or acquired probably 30 different companies that were in the programming development and distribution business. Things like CNN or Discovery or Black Entertainment Television or Telemundo or, you know, on and on and on. Stars. So there was that process of developing the programming and having the distribution. Then we got into the technology areas. As we had scale and we had a large budget to purchase and deploy capital, we got into, you know, digital programming, digital set-tops. We were the first guys who created digital television, compressed digital television in the home. We created a thing called At Home, which was the first high-speed broadband connectivity in North America using cable technology. Now, of course, that's gone on to where the industry generally is deploying speeds up to 120 megabits, capability of going faster. So, you know, it's been an evolutionary process of identifying the need and then trying to build the technologies around it. And the relationships you have with other providers, whether they're programmers, put you in partnership with all kinds of people. I mentioned Ted Turner, but News Corp, Rupert Murdoch, to create the Fox News Network. Just in the technology area, we had long-standing partnerships with Microsoft when Bill Gates first started. He was a co-provider of the digital set-top when it started. So just the whole process of building an industry, putting together the pieces. A lot of it was done through acquisition, merger, joint ventures. Pretty much all the stuff you guys study in strategic finance, I guess you call it.
In there, we've seen a lot of what people call roadkill in the merger and acquisition arena. But what would you say would be the ingredients when companies they make an acquisition and then it doesn't turn out? Why is that?
Well, there's lots of reasons. A lot of it is cultural. You're trying to blend. I mean, our experience was, we were headquartered out here in the Denver area. Our guys were all kind of cowboys. And we learned pretty quickly in our acquisitions pretty much to kill the leadership and anything we bought. You could call it the Roman Empire approach, but you would basically, let's call it retire to be kind. You would retire the guys who you made rich when you bought their company, because culturally they didn't want to work hard anymore. Probably the reason they sold the company to you was their wife was nagging them to take it easy. They were working too hard. So the first thing you learn is, once you make a guy rich, don't expect him to work hard. Very unusual people do that. And even if they say they're going to, they've run their own company, they're not going to work very hard working within your company. So that was one lesson. You pick the brightest guys you find in the company you've acquired who weren't running it, and you make them the new management, and you build horizontally that way. And you avoid this cultural clash that I think really hurts a lot of companies. If you try and blend cultures that are too different, it's very hard and disruptive, takes years, usually doesn't work. So that's lesson number one in the merger and acquisition area. The other is, plain and simple, vertical acquisitions are much tougher than horizontal ones, because you're essentially buying a business you don't know and you don't understand. Whereas buying, one like yours, you're already in it. You understand it, you know the people, you know the economics, much simpler. So a lot of vertical acquisitions don't work. I mean, if you're looking for an example, say the acquisition of, or the merger of AOL with Time Warner, which was probably the biggest disaster in merger history. The cultures were completely different. The Time Warner people were traditional media people. The AOL people were go-go internet people. AOL was frankly just the big puff bag, didn't have any real assets. It had grown so fast that its accounting was, let's say, inaccurate to be kind. And the people at Time Warner did no diligence. They put the two companies together, and basically the value collapsed shortly thereafter. So that's a huge one that didn't work. We're lucky. None of our, in growing the company, we didn't have any really bad experiences with value destruction. Probably the biggest destructive merger that I've been involved in was when we sold our big cable company, TCI, to AT&T. And that was, at the time it happened, and agreed to in 1999, it was the largest merger in the U.S. business history up to that point in time. It was about $60 billion. And unfortunately, the AT&T people got into the cable business for the wrong reason. They didn't really understand it. They thought it was going to be a solution to their problem of connecting the last mile in their telephony network. They were a little bit naive about that. And to give you rough numbers, in 1999, AT&T had a cash flow, EBITDA, of $16 billion, and they owed no net debt. Okay, by 2001, AT&T owed $78 billion and had an EBITDA of $9 billion. Okay, a destruction of value that is kind of monumental. You can't sleep and make that happen. You have to do a bunch of bad deals in order to bury your company that fast, that deep, and destroy, the momentum of a business. So that was a disaster. It was a disaster for the shareholders. It was a disaster for me personally because I was the largest shareholder. And I watched $3.5 billion of personal net worth decline rather rapidly, go down to about $500 million. And I could not sell it because I was an insider. I was blocked from selling it. So that was a disaster. Okay? And on paper, it looked terrific. My shareholders were getting AT&T stock, a company that had been around for 100 years, very liquid stock, AAA credit rating, and they were getting it at a big premium. They were paying a 40% premium in stock for our company. And so everybody thought this is wonderful, a big price, a big premium, and a liquid stock. And it was for those who were smart enough to sell. Unfortunately, some of us couldn't or wouldn't or didn't. And, the residue of that company got acquired by Comcast for pennies on the dollar a few years later. So the Comcast that you see around today, those trucks running around, are most of the assets were the old AT&T TCI assets. So that's one round that didn't work, and I think there's certainly plenty of examples of disastrous combinations, but usually it has to do with the mergers being made for the wrong reason, or there's a complete lacking of understanding of what the other business, the acquired business, is really all about.
They're made for the wrong reasons. Did you mention AT&T? They were looking to solve their problem with the merger. But at what point? I mean, they hired the best talent, legal talent, accounting talent, financial talent.
Unfortunately, they didn't. Unfortunately, they didn't. They thought they knew what they were doing. They thought they understood the cable business. The CEO, chairman CEO of AT&T at the time, was a fellow by the name of Mike Armstrong, who had been the chairman of DirecTV, which was a General Motors-owned company that was in the satellite business. And he assumed, since he knew the satellite video business, that would translate easily into an understanding of the cable business. And it really didn't. It really didn't. And so they went on an acquisition foray in which they first bought TCI, then they bought Media One. They did a whole series of joint ventures which were pretty much financially disastrous. And then, since this is strategic finance, when they bought Media One, they financed it with commercial paper. They issued $28 billion worth of commercial paper, which was due in 90 days. And when the 90 days was up, they had basically no easy way to roll it over or refinance it. Now, the timing caught them because this was right when the bubble was bursting in 2000. And so they found themselves with a short-term financing and financial markets that were running away from them. And they really had to scramble. They ended up selling pretty much to the Japanese their cellular phone business, which was probably their most valuable future business. They sold that to NTT, or sold a large stake in it to NTT. So they they had to take a whole series of short-term liquidations in order to take care of that financing mistake that they had made. So, it was a series of errors. In fact, there's a book called The End of the Line that chronicles the decline and fall of AT&T as the nation's phone company. Now, you guys may say, well, there's an AT&T. I can go buy a cell phone. That's a different AT&T. That's the old subsidiary from the Pactel and from Bell South that basically ended up buying what was left of the long-distance business of AT&T and changed their name to AT&T. It's a different company. It's a company that my career has been wound in and around for years. I started right out of graduate school, actually right out of college at Bell Labs, AT&T Bell Labs. And then when I went to McKinsey, I ended up doing a reorganization study of one of the Bell subsidiaries, New Jersey Bell, as an example. In 1993, we announced the merger of